Welcome everyone to Kids versus Stars episode 5. I'm FIDE Master Mike Klein, but only my mom calls me that. Everybody else calls me Fun Master Mike, and I'm here with streamer extraordinaire Grandmaster Ben Feingold. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, nice to work with you again. And I'm looking forward to this match today.
Yes, that's right. We're becoming the Starsky and Hutch of Chess Kid or whatever other duo you might favor. It's great to have you, Ben. But this is the show where one grandmaster throws his or her hat in the ring and has the inglorious task of trying to defend the shield against four young players. And that is exactly what we have today because David Howell, it was your turn to enter the arena, the Gladiator Arena. David is going to be taking on four players, and let's take a look at the players that we have scheduled for him to play against. The highest rated is in the middle of your screen there, International Master Marco Matteria, the 2025 French Rapid Champion, 2024 French Blitz Champion, and he's nearing 2,500, Ben. We've also got Supratit Banerjee, FIDE Master from England. And Ben, why don't you introduce the two ladies that are going to join the squad?
Yeah, the two ladies, we have the American FM Megan Paragua. Her uncle is a grandmaster. And WFM Bodhana Sivanandan from the UK. And I've seen all these players play before, and they're all very strong. So David's going to have a lot on his hands today.
That's right. They're all on the up and up. David, I'm sorry, but you're 50 points off your peak FIDE rating. None of these kids are that far off. They're all pretty much at their ceiling. And I'm going to have the pleasure of seeing Bodhana in a couple of days at Chess Fest in London. But before that, she is going to try to prove to David that she is part of the next generation of English chess. Let's take a look at the format. It is the same as the other two events we've done previously with Anish Giri and against Danya Naroditsky. Ben, tell us what the viewers are going to see today.
So there's four kids, and they play simultaneously against David Howell. There's four games, so whoever gets a 2.5 point wins. No draw offers allowed. Sounds like I made the rules. Time control. David, who's giving a clock simul, gets 65 minutes plus 15-second increment, and the kids get 15 minutes plus 15-second increment. But they can move whenever they want, and David at some point might have all four of his clocks running at the same time. So that's why he gets more time.
Absolutely. If you'll recall, the first time we did this, Anish got scarily low on time, but was able to just barely win 2.5 to 1.5. Danya played incredibly fast. He also won 2.5 to 1.5. It should be noted that the star player for the kids team on both of those matches was Alice Lee, International Master. She beat both Danya and Anish. She was scheduled to play this one, Ben, but then we had to move it back, and she is in Batumi at the Women's World Cup. She's advanced to round two, so we wish her well there. But in her place, four very, very strong kids. And as you said, they are a collective team. So if one kid gets down a knight or a bishop, whereas in a regular simul, it's probably polite to just resign. Not in this one, because you can help your teammates by dragging out the game and elongating the game and really be a good teammate in that sense. There we see the five players on screen. David is, I don't know, is he chewing gum or is he eating food? I'm really not sure.
No, it looks like he read my book, Eat Like a Grandmaster. So it's David's hungry, and looks like he's hungry for a sandwich.
Yeah, I do have some good news though. This is actually David's third clock simul, and he told me the last one he did, Ben, you might appreciate this. He played 30 kids, and the kids conspired to make moves on opposite sides of the room to make him run back and forth and back and forth. No such chicanery allowed today because David is just going to be sitting in his chair. That's one nice thing about an internet clock simul versus in-person clock simul.
Mhm. Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, he
Giving a
actually.
clock simul in real life is tough. I've done it. It's not easy. Yeah.
But the good news for David, 10 years ago, he played a 10 board clock simul in real life where almost everybody was an IM. Now think about that. 10 IMs in a clock simul, and he told me that he won most of the games, but he also told me 2015 was the peak of his powers. His words, not mine.
Mhm.
Yeah, should be interesting to see how much he's, well, I was going to say lost it or maybe gained from being, Magnus Carlsen's BFF the last decade. That
Mhm.
must have rubbed off on him a little bit. Then Magnus actually played a clock simul at the last Chess.com meetup and beat our entire staff without too much trouble.
Well, I assume that you weren't playing that. Otherwise, you would have had a lot of trouble.
We did have, thank you for that. We did have one master play. Interestingly, Magnus did not take any time advantage on any of the boards. And the boards were not even in a circle, they were linear. So he had to run back and forth, but that's just
Wow.
Magnus being Magnus. Let's take a look at these players here.
Mhm.
Bodhana looks ready. Marco, by the way, was a Chess Kid Youth Championship semifinalist this year. So if his name looks familiar, you'll know why. The pride of the next generation of French chess, along with Marc-Andre Marizzi. Megan is already in focus mode, and Super T just looks like, it's time to go. So we're going to start the matches at any moment here. I did ask David, by the way, is he protecting the shield against the next generation of English chess? Because both Super T and Bodhana, of course, are English. And he said, look, if I win, I protect the shield. If I lose, I help the next generation get confidence. So it's a win-win for me. And Ben, he's actually kind of caught in the middle of two generations of English chess. Because remember, we had Spielman and Nunn and all of those players. And then David was kind of like by himself a little bit, or maybe
Mhm.
at the tail end of the who am I thinking of? The Gawain Jones generation. And anyway, but next crop of juniors are going to be joining David, hopefully, as part of the Olympiad team soon. Of course, Shreyas Royal just beat his record for youngest English grandmaster.
Wow.
We are off and running. David became
Yep.
GM at 16, and Shreyas Royal just beat his record. I think Shreyas became GM at 15, but we are off and running, and David has white against Supratit in this first game. We have knight f3. Ben, what do you think his overall match strategy should be? Do you think he should just, I don't know, try to simplify and make a draw against Marco and play for the win against the other three, or what?
Well, I'm looking at the first move in each game, and he's playing differently. He played knight f3 in two games, c4 in one game, and g3 in the other. So he wants to get four different openings, I guess, uh, which he's going to get. And I don't think he wants to draw anybody. I think he's going to play for a win in all the games because that's the way Howell plays. And although Marco is the highest rated, I mean, still David is slow chess FIDE rating is much higher. So I think David's going to try to win every game, and he's going to get different positions out of the opening, uh, which I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Maybe just for interest for the audience, it's nice if we have four different openings.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, if we can go to the bird's eye, we can go and take a look at those four different openings to see what he's chosen. Ben, you mentioned them, but it might help the viewer a little bit to see exactly the four openings that he's picked there. So no E4 or D4. You said the Bodhana game was one G3.
Yeah.
So he's a little bit maybe switching to a Catalan opening there, but avoiding a lot of confrontation in the center to start out. The reason I asked you about match strategy is because after Anish played his four-board simul, he told me his goal was to make as quick of a draw as possible with Grandmaster Andy Woodward. He ended up accidentally beating Andy, so best laid plans of mice and men go out the window. But he
Yeah.
did openly talk about that was his idea going into the match. But
Uh,
you got to take what the position gives you. So
yeah, amazing that Anisha's strategy is to draw. Oh, wait a minute. Um, yeah, Howell is known uh, for playing very long games, often over 100 moves, but probably doesn't want to do that during the clock simul. So maybe we'll see more interesting middle games as the games develop.
okay, well, going back to the Super T game, looks like a King's Indian defense
Mhm.
setup against the Catalan. This is bringing back memories of when I played Alex Vaitkevich 3 consecutive years as black in the same tournament, and we got in this position all 3 times. So I know a little bit about this particular opening, but we're still in the opening phase, of course. Let's switch around and take a look at the other English player, Bodhana Sivanandan. She comes to a lot of our events. And we're going to switch over to her game. Let's take a look. She got a very similar position, but she chose a different setup, a little bit more of a solid setup. But I'm still expecting c4. Ben, it kind of looks like he's playing the same opening after all. He's just using a little bit of a different move order.
That's right. In all of the games, he's fianchettoing his king bishop, and uh, yeah, that's surprising to me that he chose different moves on move one, but basically got similar positions. and he ended up playing b3. Yeah, and the other game we were looking at, um, Black played a King's Indian with d6, and Bodhana's playing d5. So this is more like a Grunfeld. And Howell played b3. He's going to play c4 later, but he wants to defend his pawn first. And Fianchetto was bishop on b2. And yeah, it looks like positional strategical chess is what uh, Howell is aiming for in these games, and Fianchettoing bishops. He's already Fianchettoed five bishops, six bishops. Six of his eight bishops have been Fianchettoed so far. So looks like
Uh,
he's gonna play the long maneuvering game and try to outplay his opponents, not in the opening but in the middle game.
That's a great observation that he's finger-cutting all of his bishops. I asked him before the match, and he told me this is a quote: "My only goal is to not make one-move blunders." He said when he's been doing it a lot more and more in faster time controls these days. So maybe this is an attempt to not get into anything terribly topical. But let's continue around the carousel and take a look at our other two players. Megan Paragua, she might actually be playing from Europe. I'm not sure. She's been a big European tour. So we're going to switch over to her game. And okay, now we have some pawns capturing in the center, but I just want to go back because I want to show how, again, the same sort of setup is being reached. So if I go back, yeah, we had another Catalan set up for white, except she decided to capture. And I'm going to guess, Ben, this is some sort of Queen's Gambit accepted, transposed, or something.
I would still call it a Catalan. Knight c3 is a little unusual. Normally, white castles there. So this d takes c4, knight e5, which is what happens, c5. That's completely reasonable. And I think we might see queens come off. And again, that's Howell's strategy is to not get any tactics, any blunders, just get positional play and try to outplay his opponents in the middle game, or in this case, the end game.
Yeah, this looks like one of those symmetrical positions where this bishop can't get to its best square, and white is hanging his hat on that one little thing, but it's something, and you're right. He's just going to try to outplay the youngster. We often say, take the kid to the end game, and he's taking that quite literally here as the queens leave the board in the first 10 moves. So we'll see if this match strategy pays off. Also, remember, it's a 15-second increment for every move played by all players, and that definitely is meant to help the simul giver more because he's going to have to play 4 games at once. So building up some extra time on the clock. Actually, I'm looking at all the clocks, and David already has almost all of his time on all of the clocks. So he's basically
Mhm.
playing in space here. He's playing on zero time. The only player we haven't looked at is our top rated player, International Master Marco Matteria of France. We're going to click over to his game. He is nearing 2500 classical. Now, a lot of times on the screen, you're looking at their FIDE rapid rating, which may or may not be terribly accurate. And in Marco's case, yeah, it looks like it's even higher because he must play a lot of rapid tournaments. But he is the French rapid champion. At least I think he is. We were doing some research on that before. Anyway, we know he's the French Blitz champion from last year, and this is his position. Ben, what do you see here?
Yeah, and again, as I said earlier, lots of fianchetto bishops. Um, this isn't the most exciting, but I actually like white. White has more center pawns. White has the plan to play d4 soon. Um, and black is basically trying to meet whatever white does. The only problem white could have in the future is the c4 pawn could be weak if white doesn't play d3, and black could play something like knight a5, bishop a6. That seems like it's in the future. So I like David's position. It seems a little bit anti-positional for black to have traded on c4 earlier, giving up the center pawn. But it's nothing too terrible.
And we should mention the puns are flying today. It's a race to the bottom. And we were mentioning before, how will he do today versus the kids? I don't know if that chat like that one. Chat, I was going to ask you, who do you think is going to win today? But we had a very oblique way of asking that question using another pun. Is David Goliath today? Almost 2/3 of you thinks that David is Goliath, which I presume means that you think that David's going to win. So let me ask the chat a different question. If one kid is able to break through with a win, remember it was Alice in the first two times we've had this event, who do you think that kid will be? Who do you think, even if the kids lose, I'm not saying they will, but since you seem to think they will, chat, which kid do you think might break through for a win? I'd love to hear what you think. So let us know in the chat. Uh, I'm monitoring Twitch. Ben's following YouTube. Whatever chat you're on, you can let us know.
Go YouTube.
Right. Insider poll to see if Ben can solicit more comments on that question or if I can on Twitch. But in any case,
Mhm.
I'd love to go back to the four board view and see how these positions are lining up. Now that we've taken a little walk around the park and we've seen all four games, now we can pick which one we think is the most interesting. Um, I like those closed pawn structures because, well, frankly, I can talk about them a little bit. Um, so if you don't mind, I'm going to call my own number here. Let's go back to the Supratit game and take
That's
a
the
look
game
at
I
that.
thought you were going to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of
White
a
playing king
soft
is in
spot.
here.
I do. I do. Okay. So the knight goes to c5, and maybe David, you're not David, you're Ben. Maybe Ben, we can describe to the viewers the very clever idea of b3. So black played a5 to stop b4 to keep the knight there. But Ben, tell us why white played b3.
So white wants to play b4, which, as you pointed out, can just get captured. So then white might think, okay, I'll play a3 and then b4. But unfortunately for white, due to the en passant rule, black can play a4. And if white plays b4, black takes en passant. And then Danny gets an email that his opponent cheated, taking my pawn on the side. And this isn't good for white. So white plays b3 first, basically to prevent the en passant capture, so that now white can play a3 and b4, and black doesn't have any more en passant because the pawn's on the third rank.
Very well explained. And yeah, that's exactly why this move, you may have thought it was to fianchetto yet another bishop. And
Mhm.
actually, I guess that could happen. I don't think that's really his goal, though. The goal is to get the pawn to b4. You just have to take baby steps to get it there. So the big pawn break for black is almost always f5. And if I'm black, I'm thinking it's time to move the knight. Now, I love moving the knight to h5, but the problem is if you play f5, and the pawn takes, and you take back, you want to always take with the pawn. You don't ever want to let white get control of e4. The problem is that pawn would no longer be guarding the knight, and the queen is lined up. So I'm going to make a move for white just to make it a little bit easier on our viewers here. If black plays f5, it's probably getting close to being a mistake because takes, and I'm already seeing I may not have analyzed far enough, but white wants to take and then take the knight,
Mhm.
but maybe the bishop can take and the knight is loose. So I don't know if it works right away, but I am letting our viewers know that is the concern that black has to deal with the knight going to h5.
Yeah, the knight on h5 is very aggressively placed unless it gets in trouble later from white's queen. Uh, and sometimes you don't want to play knight h5 when white's pawn's on g3 because you can't play knight f4 anyway. So it might be safer to move the knight somewhere else.
Exactly. So the knight might go back to e8, might
Mhm.
go back to d7. I like e8 because in some lines, it's actually this pawn that white ends up targeting. That seems like a long, long way away. But the knight goes ahead and guards, and it keeps this knight's availability to go back to d7. Although even if b4 happens, the knight sometimes goes back to a6. But in any case, I think I'm in the live position. Actually, maybe not because David's clock is running. Okay, bishop to d7 happened. David, because Supratit did not move the knight. Maybe you can help explain why that is.
Bishop d7 seems like uh, black wants to play knight a4 after white plays a3 b4. So then we trade on b4 and play knight a4. That's one idea of bishop to d7. White
Okay.
knight. This is tricky for both sides here.
Yeah, that's
It's not
really
clear if
interesting.
white
Just
should
trading
trade or
off the
move the knight
knight.
away. Yeah, and just develops a
Yeah,
piece.
also not sure. Okay. Looking at all four boards, our eval bar says that David is slightly better on all four. So his
Mhm.
greatest fear about making a one move blunder has not happened just yet. I do have an idea here, and we didn't even look at it, but it is something to watch out for. If we go back to this position, with the rook being on this square, you can almost look at tactics with knight takes e4. I don't think that they quite work here, but keep that in mind with the bishop maybe coming to this square in some lines. For example, let's just say, and I'm just having fun because, we still have a lot of time. What if white plays a move like queen e2? I'm sorry,
This
in
is
this
black's.
position. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so here, it is actually, this is the live position. So here, if David plays the move queen e2, now knight takes, you have to take this way, takes, takes, and we're just having some fun. But now bishop f5. Importantly, you're winning the entire rook without losing your bishop, which means you've won an exchange. So fun with tactics. It does happen that if you're going to be a King's Indian player, you have to know about tricks on e4 because they do happen.
That's a nice trick. I'm sure in your King's Indian career, you've pulled that off at least once.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's a reason I chose this game. Okay. Anyway, I believe a move has been made. H3. Wow, playing really, really slow chess. Do you think he's going to play G4 to help inhibit the move F5? Or maybe, Ben, he's trying to get his bishop to E3 and doesn't want to be hit with knight to G4? It's a very slow move, though.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to play G4 necessarily. I think he's just protecting the G4 square.
Okay.
Um, and as you said, he can play bishop E3 later. Not now because the E pawn's attacked, but at some point. Um, so it's a very prophylactic move, very slow. That seems to be the way David wants to play these games. Um, Not give the kids any tactics to look at.
And just to bring things full circle, if white reasons that he wants to put his bishop on e3, but that unprotects the pawn, white might think, hey, I'll put my queen on c2, but then we go back to the knight takes e4 tactic. It's still there. So there you go. Okay, we spent a little bit of time on this game. Supratit is actually starting to put the pressure on David's clock. Supratit is not draining his clock, but we're going to move on. Ben, do you have any place you want to go next?
Yeah, we have some trades in Megan's game, in the Catalan, so we could look at
Okay,
that.
excellent. Okay, so we move over to Megan's game, and in fact, you're right. This is that game where we said we had symmetrical pawns, but maybe the one advantage David has is this bishop cannot get out. So Ben, what else do you see here?
Yeah, that's right. White's slightly better, and what Black wants to do is move the bishop to D7 eventually, or uh, play E5 and move the bishop out somewhere better. E5 sort of gives away the D5 square, but it's a lot of trades if White goes there. So I assume David's on other games because I think knight takes E3 is forced. I'm not sure. He can't be thinking here. He must just not be at the board yet. But he has to play
Yeah,
knight takes E3. And then, White's bishop is better than Black's bishop. Um, and Black has to figure out how to untangle the queen side. Should be doable, though. Should be just Black is slightly worse.
you know what's interesting? Again, I talked to David. Didn't want to bother him during the broadcast, but I asked him a lot of questions before the broadcast, and he called himself famously slow. But you know what? He may famously be not using technology because in this position, if you're white and you play bishop e3, just because you're playing a clock simul doesn't mean we turned pre-move off.
Mm-hmm.
He totally could have pre-moved knight takes e3
Right.
because at this point it's cost him, I don't know, a couple of minutes or something. But that's a thing, a couple of minutes is really important in a clock simul. So unless he's going to play pawn takes just to keep the knight, well, no, he's losing a knight. So what am I
You just
thinking?
stick with an eye.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So pre-move, David. I can't help you anymore, but maybe okay.
Mhm.
He finally gets around to it, and he takes. And my guess is that Megan's already got her move ready. Um, I should say we did not get these four kids together to talk about team match strategy, but they're all smart enough to know that putting the pressure on their opponent on the clock actually helps all four of them.
Mhm.
And right now, none of the kids have dipped below really 13 and a half minutes. I guess Supratit maybe a little bit, but that's unlike the first two matches. We had some kids drain their clocks down to 5 minutes rather quickly.
Yeah, and the next move that Megan made, the engine's giving a question mark to. Seems sort of normal to keep the white knight on a b5.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure why the engine doesn't like that move. Maybe it was more important to get the bishop out, play something like rook b8, bishop d7, or play e5 and bishop e6. Something that gets the black bishop out might be a better idea.
Yep, and just to have some fun, is there a world in which you can sack the pawn? I don't think so. I don't think that black gets quite enough here, simply because I don't see a great knight move to pressure the b2 square. So that's not what the computer was thinking, but it is something that you'd want to think about if you were black. So a6 played, as you said. And now David is back to thinking. Okay, well, the person who is closest to equality, at least on the eval bar, is our highest rated player, Marco Mazzaria, with that really high FIDE rapid rating in the mid 2600s. He's
Wow.
probably really close to earning the Grandmaster title in real life. So let's scoot over to Marco's board and see what he's got going on. And here we are. Okay, so this plan of bishop a6 and knight a5 is not coming to fruition because he put his pawn on a6. What other developments do you see, Ben, here that are worthy of our discussion?
Yeah, white's rook on b1 is putting pressure on the b6 pawn. I mean, black didn't want to play a6, but with the queen on c7, he was going to get hassled with knight b5. So he decided that it's better to weaken the b pawn than allow knight b5, which may be true. Um, and white dropped back with his bishop to a1 to open up the b line for his rook, put pressure on b6. Marco just played rook b8 because he's going to probably do the same thing, play bishop a8 and defend his b pawn. And it's just a question of, is white going to play d4 sooner or later? And David doesn't want to make any one move blunders, so he's going to think about it a while before he decides whether he's going to play d4. One of the
Yeah, it's a
problems with
critical
d4
decision.
is
It's
when I,
probably,
sorry.
no, please tell us. I want you to tell us about d4.
Yeah, one of the problems with d4 is after the trade on d4, the c4 pawn can become weak again, and black could play something like knight a5, and then white has to defend the hanging pawns, or so they're called. Rook c8 also
Yeah,
attacks the pawn again. So David might
exactly.
not play d4 so quickly.
Yeah, we have a chess kid lesson on hanging pawns, and in fact, it's one of the videos that took me the most prep time to be able to record because half the time they're good, half the time they're bad, and being able to
Mhm.
explain when they're good and when they're bad, or I should say when they're targets and when they're strengths, is probably better use of words, is not so easy. The one thing I will tell our viewers here is that if you can make one of the pawns move, either one, they both become weaker because they lose their ability to advance further and have each other have them defend each other. In this position, though, I think black has the luxury of neither pawn even being able to move. Both those
Mhm.
squares are targeted by all of black's pieces.
Right.
So, to my eye, they look like more of a target than a strength in this particular position.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's go back to the live position, which is David trying to figure out if he wants to play d4. And I think I'm still in analysis mode. Sorry about that. Let me get back to the live position, unless that actually happened in the real game. Don't know that
No, I
it
don't think
did.
so.
Okay, so we're still waiting here on David's move. Looks like a big advantage, or maybe not big is the wrong word, but a noticeable advantage is being turned in by David in his game against the young FIDE master, Megan Paragua. I forget the exact stat, but a couple of months ago when she became an FM, she became something like the sixth youngest woman to ever become FM.
Mhm.
But actually, no moves have been made unless I'm in analysis mode. I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah, I have
having
moves. Yeah.
trouble. Okay, let me go back and yeah, okay. This is the game. So he castled queenside, putting his rook on the open file. And keep in mind, he may not prefer his king to be on this side of the board, he may just be trying to get his king out of the middle as quickly as possible while getting the rook to the open file. Okay, we had rook b8, rook d6, hitting that knight, which is suddenly loose. And now, ooh, the only square that she saw for the knight was to go back, and that really inhibits the development of her
Mhm.
pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, that
All
really
of
blocks
white's,
the bishop a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, David's
So
pretty
that
happy.
bishop, I agree. I agree. Let's take a look at his expression here on the screen. Megan looks, I don't know, like she's been given a puzzle she's never seen before or something.
Mhm.
Can't really tell her expression. But anyway, she plays b5. She's trying to get the bishop out. b3 was played. Ben, you want to help us out with b3? Is it to secure
Yeah,
the
he
a4
wants to
square?
put his king on b2 and get it off
Hmm,
the open file.
okay, okay. But okay, we've reached the live position. Black still cannot develop the bishop. Or wait, I think I spoke too soon. I originally thought if the bishop moves, that white would win two knights for a rook, but I'm still thinking that actually now.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
knight
he's
guards the
taking nine.
bishop.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So takes, takes, takes. I mean, David's calling himself slow. David, a whole new level of slow is happening over here on my board because it took me forever to see the knight guarding the bishop.
I
Okay, but anyway, the point stands that in
think
this
the other reason
position,
David played b3 was Black could try to play knight b6 to c4 later. He's just getting rid of that idea.
okay, discarding the c4 square. Okay. All right. Well, this is the live position, and I would say noticeable advantage for white. All of white's pieces are make a little bit more sense than the black counterparts. So things are looking pretty good there for David. He's got a stable position. It's not even really fathomable that you could hang a piece in such a position. For those who are just joining us, this is Kids versus Stars, episode 5. In this case, the star is Grandmaster David Howell, the youngest player in all of history to beat a Grandmaster in a rated game. He beat John Nunn at the age of 9 in a Blitz game. I think that may have been passed by
Mhm.
our friend Akshanth from Singapore. Anyway, a lot of history has changed since David was 9 years old. I'm not going to dox his age, but it's a little bit higher than 9. So he's also 3 times British champion, and he's playing 4 kids today in a clock simul. We are going around the world here, taking a look at the different games. Ben, help me out. Who have we not looked at in a while?
We probably haven't looked at Bodhana in a while. I think the Supratit game has a
Good
lot of
call.
interesting things happening though. That's really
Okay.
hotting up
Let's
in England.
okay. Let's go to Suprateet's game. Suprateet also did really well in the Chess Kid Youth Championship and made it to the knockout phase. So they're going to click over there. And I'm going to make sure we have the live position because I'm just going to take you through the moves we've not seen yet. So bishop to e3 did happen. Notice there's no pressure on e4 anymore.
Mhm.
b6 to guard the knight. a3, we talked about this later. No more en passant ideas. a4, b4. If you take en passant now you literally can complain to Danny Wrench. This is the one time you can complain about en passant. Okay, so the knight hops into b3. Knight to b5. Computer doesn't like it. f5, standard move that black has to play.
Mhm.
And now we are finally in the live position. This is probably the most double-edged game. And Ben, I'm curious your thoughts. I'm always on Team King's Indian, so I'm not impartial on this position.
Yeah, I've played King's Indian with both colors. Um, I don't really like knight b5 because it unprotects the e4 pawn, and it also prevents white from playing c5 because the knight's hanging. So yeah, I sort of agree with the computer on this one. Seems like black is doing fine. Um, and even knight e8 was played, as you pointed out, that defends the c7 square. So black's queen can move and knight takes c7 isn't a threat. So I think black's doing okay here.
Well, good. I'm glad it's not just my impartiality that arrived at the same conclusion. Black got f5 in before white got c5 in. So if nothing else, then we just take those two things at face value. I like black's position. Now, as I mentioned before, you almost never take with the bishop here because you don't want white to be able to plant a piece on e4. However, there's an exception for everything. This does challenge the rook. The rook is running out of squares. Could it be an exception, Ben, that you take with the bishop and go after the rook?
It's possible. I like both moves for black. Um, I guess after rook b2, white's okay. Bishop f5, rook b2. If e4, then knight fd4. Seems like it's okay.
Yeah. So if
So
there's
black
no
doesn't win
tactics based on
immediately.
mistakes, F
Yeah, probably just taking with a pawn is better.
certainly more in style with how black usually plays. It may look a little bit weird to open up your king, but you're not really opening up your king. There's no white pieces near your king. And when you take, well, you could almost look at it as like a hanging pawns position where both pawns have the ability to
Mhm.
come forward one day. But this ensures that white never gets to put a minor piece on the e4 square, which is why we usually lean toward the pawn capture, even though it might feel more, I don't know, fewer pawn islands or whatever. It might feel a little bit safer to take with the bishop. We don't want to give away control of that square. In fact, G takes did happen. Supratit does agree with me, which is a danger, but in this case, probably okay.
Yeah, this looks like black is doing okay now.
Yeah, in fact, of all four games, this is the game where the eval bar says that the kids are doing the best. Not like winning or anything
Mhm.
crazy, but in the other games, I would say that David has some sort of noticeable advantage. Not nothing up to one plus one, but something in between, plus a little something and plus one.
David seems to be handling the clock really well. He has a lot of time on all the boards.
That's true. However, I'm going to say that the kids are also handling their time reasonably well. All the kids have around 10 minutes or more. Again, in the first couple iterations, we saw some of the kids dip below 5 minutes rather quickly.
Mhm.
Now, the biggest thing that David could possibly do to help himself would be to register a win quickly, because just to knock a game out, but he's not close to registering any sort of quick wins. So, from a collective team sense, I think the kids are doing well. Let's go, Ben, over to the Bodhana game now that this one has settled just a touch because we haven't looked at her game in a little
Mhm.
bit. So we're going to move on over to Bodhana's game. She's already on the English women's national team. Pretty amazing. She was, I think, 9 years old when she played in Budapest. And it was pretty awesome to see a 9-year-old competing for a vaunted country like England. Okay, so we have queen to f5. That was her last move. Queen came from d7 to f5. Computer doesn't like it, and I'm going to lean on my co-commentator, the Grandmaster Ben Feingold, to try to help us understand this.
Yeah, the queen is sort of strangely placed on f5 because it could get harassed later. Um, I'm not sure if it helps black any, but I don't see why it's dubious. I don't see anything white can do to prove that queen f5 is such a bad move. White has the two bishops, and it seems like black doesn't have a ton of counterplay yet, and white is just slightly better. But the engine says white's clearly better, which is a little bit surprising to me. Engines like bishops, as I do. Um, but yeah, I don't see anything immediate that Howell can do to increase his advantage. I think the engine just likes the bishops.
Yeah, the weird thing for me is that other than the d5 pawn, which is guarded plenty of times, there's no obvious targets for those bishops. So the computer is, as much as we hate when the public tells us, oh, you can see 20 moves down the road, I think the computer is looking somehow 20 moves down the road at something beyond the human event horizon here because
Mhm.
the bishops they're nice, but not a lot of targets. Just to get back to my question from a few minutes ago, we did ask the chat who they thought had the best chance of registering the dub. And no surprise, International Master Marco Manteria was the number one kid guest, although he did not have a majority. He only had a plurality, 43%. And here's the interesting thing. Number two was Bodhana. They're
Mhm.
voting for the youngest kid, 26%. Super Teak got 17%. And I'm shocked that Megan got 13% because next to Bodhana, Megan probably has the most name recognition on Chess Kid and Chess.com.
Mhm.
Um, she's really strong. But anyway, that's your vote. Marco does get 43%, and we'll see if the chat is correct.
Is the chat usually correct?
we like the hive mind here. We like to, let them know when they're right and also tease them when they're wrong. Uh, I didn't even ask you, but are you rooting for anybody here? I mean, I know it's a bit of a battle of generations, but I'm not sure we're a member of either generation today.
Yeah, Howell's old, but he's not old like I am. Uh, but I think I'm older than all four of the kids added together. Yeah, truth hurts. Um, yeah, I'm not really rooting for either one. I hope Howell doesn't make any one move blunders because he's playing four people at once. Um, but so far it looks like he's holding down the fort. So I think I don't like to root against people, so I guess I'm going to predict 2-2 so that everybody's happy or unhappy. Everybody's equally happy.
It would be cool to see the kids get the best of the GM. Remember, they narrowly lost against Anish and Danya 2.5 to 1.5. I do, my day job is chess kid, so that's where I kind of root for the kids. But my night job
Mhm.
is chess.com journalist, where I'm not allowed to root for anybody.
Mhm.
So that is my way of hedging. So I'm not going to give you a real answer. But let's move off of this game while we're waiting for David to figure out if, in fact, Queen F5 is a dubious move, as our glyph claims that it is. And chat, I'm going to leave it up to you. Very first person that responds, I will move to that game. You can pick Megan or Marco. I'm looking at Twitch chat here. Twitch chat, Megan or Marco. First person that types it in, I'll even announce your name on the air. Which one do you want? And I know we're on delay, so now I've got to fill the next 10 seconds of delay time playing the Jeopardy theme music, which we don't have the rights to and we're not going to buy.
That's
So I'm
right.
not even going to hum it. Yeah. All right. I got Megan. Oscar Queen sacrifice. You got your name announced on the air, and you're the fastest typer. So let's go over to the Megan Paragua game. Ben, as you mentioned, she famously is not the daughter of Grandmaster Mark Paragua. She is the niece of Mark
Mhm.
Paragua. And here are the moves that we missed. We were on this position after B3. She played G6, which doesn't really help the development situation, actually. But the computer says it's okay. Interesting. King B2. Ben Feingold mentioned the king wants to get off the open C file. Knight B6. Okay, a very harsh question mark there because, or a dubious move mark, because she's got to do something about her development. A3, king to G7. She's making as much progress as she can without actually improving her bishop. F4. Okay, that stops the E5 development maneuver. We know why that move is played. And Ben, I can see you're locked in after H5. Ben, the last couple of moves here, who do you think has been benefited by, let's say, the last 5 moves that we've played?
I think both sides are trying to improve, what they have. Uh, I don't see why knight b6 is so bad. It seems okay. Um, yeah, I think both sides are playing well, and I think considering David's playing four games at once against such strong opponents, David's I think playing super well in these games. He hasn't made any mistakes. He's slightly better or clearly better in most of the games. He's using his clock well, and I like the moves that were made. F4, I like H5, and I mean, it looks like Megan's just going to sit back, sit tight, and then uh, H3 was played, which the engine doesn't like, but it seems normal. So if Black plays H4, David wants to play G4. So it seems reasonable to me.
And then we have another non-en passant situation, our second of the
Mhm.
day. So you would be able to write
Non-passant.
to Daniels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like en
You,
passant in India. Non-passant. Yeah.
Non-Passant. Very nice. And Ben, it looks like David's playing like a boa constrictor here. He played this
Mhm.
B3 move to keep the knight out of these squares. He played this F4 move to stop the E5 development idea. And he's played H3 to be able to play G4. I don't know if boa constrictors are native to England, but he's
Mhm.
playing this position really Petrosian-like. And she's just kind of shuffling pieces around to my eye. Bishop F3, another little itty bitty move, but slowly improving his position.
Yeah, David's just playing really good strategically in all the games, and he has a nice advantage here. This may be his biggest advantage.
And you mentioned he's doing well on the clock, but he's actually got almost the exact same time on all four clocks. Check it out. 42:21, 41:59, 42:01,
Wow.
41:56. So he's going around the carousel so equally that he's only got a 25-second difference between his most amount of time and his least amount of time. But that can tick down pretty quickly because now all those opening moves are over. No more free 15-second, no think type moves. Got to be a little careful as all four clocks start dipping to below 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think David should be happy with the situation so far in the match. But as you said, as the games go longer, that's when blunders start to appear in a simul.
Okay, well, let's move over to that game where the chat predicted that Marco maybe had the best chance, at least pre-match, of getting a W. So we're going to move over to David Howell versus our French Blitz and Rapid champion, I think, Marco Mazzaria, international master. He's up over 2480 in his classical FIDE rating. And this is the last time we saw the position. So let's see what moves we've missed. We had knight e1, knight a7 offering a trade of bishops, rook to b3. The bishops did trade, and now we are in the live position. Ben, while you're absorbing this position, we had a really fantastic chat question about what they thought the final score would be. Um, it actually looks like 76% of the chat thinks he'll win 4-0. That is incredibly optimistic if I'm reading this right, because yeah, that's really hard to do, especially because once you win two, you may just be angling for a draw, or you may take a quick draw to focus on the other three.
Mhm.
Um, 0% think that the kids will win all four of their games. So if I'm reading that chat poll correct, my team can tell me if I'm wrong. That is an incredibly optimistic chat. Perhaps we only invited people age 30 and above to our chat today, and they're all rooting for David's generation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would be completely shocked if Howell wins 4-0. Although I would be more shocked if the kids win 4-0. Um, yeah, it seems like the most likely results are 2.5, 1.5, or 2-2 in my mind. Um, Neither one of those would surprise me. But yeah, I
Marco
mean,
does.
slow and steady the way Howell's playing all the games.
Yeah, Marco has the least amount of time of all of the kids. It's interesting. Sometimes these slow maneuvering positions take up more time on your clock than a position with a lot of forcing type moves.
Mm.
So anyways, knights comes back to c6. It's kind of a battle of backward pawns. The b6 pawn, not terribly unsafe. d2, again, not terribly unsafe, but both sides have to figure out long term what they're going to do about their pawns. This knight looks headed to a5, where we thought it was going to go a long time ago,
Mhm.
to win a tempo on the rook and pressure the c4 pawns. So doesn't win the game or anything, but definitely better than the a7 square for the knight.
Yeah, yeah, A7 wasn't a nice square. Just wanted to trade bishops.
Absolutely. One nice thing about a7 is it supports the b5 push, but I don't really think black is preparing b5 in any sense. I think he's just going to accept the backward pawn and defend it and then wait for a different opportunity to advance it forward. But it doesn't look like he's aiming for it right now.
Yeah, it looks like black is close to equality because it's not clear what white's plan is in this position. It's not clear what black's plan is, and so in a simul, it's going to be hard for David to figure out something long term. Usually, you just have to meet the demands of the current position, but there's not many demands, so this game's going to go a long time. Also,
I'd
we
love to
should
go
tell the
back and
chat that there's no draw
go ahead.
offers allowed. So uh, these games are all going to go a long time.
That's right. No draw offers allowed. This match is actually just for posterity and bragging rights. It would be a little bit weird to offer a draw in a friendly football match or something. So why not play it all to the end? Now, of course, they can draw by threefold repetition and all that good stuff. But no tactical draws, and the kids are not talking to each other during the games or formulating a match strategy. So even though they're operating as a team, it's kind of like the Olympiad. You're not talking with your teammates in the games, or at least you shouldn't be.
Mhm.
Okay, I'd love to go back to the bird's eye and look at all four games at the same time so we can kind of, now that we're about halfway through the match, or maybe a little bit less than halfway through, we can get a big picture sense of exactly what's going on. Take a look at the player cameras, see if anybody looks nervous. David looks totally locked in there. Bodhana looks pretty chill. And you know what I loved? I think she just played at the FIDE. Let me make sure I get the event right. The FIDE World Rapid Team Championship.
Hmm.
And she brings her own car seat to the games because she needs help sitting up. And
Wow.
for her, it's just like bringing a chess clock or her
Mhm.
scorebook. It's just another apparatus she has to bring to the games, which is great. It's not a not anything more than that, just something that she has to use to play better chess.
That reminds me of Chessman comics, where one of Chessman's opponents was a little kid, and he sat on this stack of books so he could reach the pieces, and all the books were like, Einstein made difficult, and the theory of this, and they were like books for geniuses. So,
So that's an
yep,
interesting rules question, Ben. If
yeah.
you've got like an Einstein book
Uh,
beside you when you play a tournament chess game, is that considered use of notes just because you're osmotically absorbing another genius's thoughts?
uh, 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 it's a good thing I'm not a national tournament director because I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Um, we did, by the way, see Supratit there chewing his nails a little bit. So if, if there's any signs of nerves, maybe it was Supratit. Um, but yeah, we've reached kind of the interregnum here between the fast moves of the opening and the relative simplicity of the end game, where all four games are experiencing some maneuvering. The only one that I thought might explode was that Supratit game. So we haven't
Mhm.
been there in a while. It is the King's Indian, so it gets a, +1 from me. But let's go over to the Supratit game and see if any moves have been played. In fact, they have been, because after G takes F5, which is the move that we were expecting, we had King H2. And maybe, Ben, I'm making a little bit too much out of this, but he's made a lot of little moves in all four boards, a lot of little pawn moves and everything. Maybe just to turn the clock back on his opponent. King H2 is another one of those. I think if you're given the clock simul, maybe you think, you know what? I don't want to make a dramatic decision. I don't know how to improve my position. I'm just going to make this little move to get my king a little bit safer and to pass the clock to my opponent. H6 was the reply. Computer doesn't like it, but now we have the live position.
Yeah, H6 just controls the G5 square, so white can't play bishop G5 or knight G5 later. Seems pretty natural.
Mhm.
But yeah, the engine never likes our moves. All chess moves are bad unless the engine likes them. But it seems okay to me.
Yeah, yeah. And I like how black is sort of keeping the option open to push either pawn. Remember, we talked about hanging pawns a few minutes ago. The minute you push one, then they both become a little bit less mobile. These are not technically hanging pawns by the Webster Dictionary because of the
Mhm.
presence of this pawn, but they do function as hanging pawns in some sense. If you push this one, you lose the d4 square. And if you push this one, you lose the e4 square. And if the pawns trade, you might lose d4 as well. So you got to wait for the right opportunity to push those pawns. And I don't think that black is ready. Maybe the knight wants to get here first. Ideally, you'd get this rook in the game, but you can't get your queen out to the king side with the knight on f6 because c7 would be weak. So I don't know what the right way for black to get some of these pieces off the back row are, but black could even take. The danger there is that after takes, now your c7 pawn is backward and it will absolutely never be able to move because there'll be three white pawns waiting, two of which are en passant. And I wonder if Danny has ever gotten a double en passant hate mail piece before. My opponent did it twice in one game. I don't know.
Yeah, I still think black is fine. Because black has the counterplay with the nice center pawns. Knight on B3 is attacking some squares in white's position. And it's not clear what white should do here, since typically white's going to push on the queen side, but white can't play C5 here because the knight's attacked. So I think black's doing fine in this position.
Yeah, I kind of agree. The computer might say equal, but if black has a long-term plan and white doesn't, then from a human perspective, a little bit easier for black to play. Totally agree with that statement. Just checking to see if any of the kids are getting really low on time. None of them are that stressed yet. Marco still has 6 minutes. Everybody else upwards of 7 minutes. And yeah, that man, that Bodhana game, just nothing is happening in that game. She might
Mhm.
end up being the last one standing, just because nothing major is happening. Let's see maybe, Ben, if Megan has solved the problem of her light squared bishop. Spoiler alert, she hasn't. But let's see if she's come up with anything to give that bishop some life, liberty, and some pursuit of happiness. Okay, this is Megan's position.
Yeah, she just played
And
rook from h8 to e8. Maybe she's looking at playing e5 again, getting her bishop open.
love it. Yep. In one sense, she's toggling because she can't improve her position, but in another sense, as you said, she's actually at least giving lip service to the idea that she might finally push. And with h3 hanging, it's not much, but it actually is a tempo that black
Mhm.
gets to hang on her shoulders. So, all right, white to move here. Now, white could play rook to d8. First move that comes to my mind. Don't know if it's good.
Yeah, you're trying to take the pressure off of black playing e5.
Hmm.
Problem is, uh, maybe it's not a problem. I thought black could move the bishop. Oh, bishop c6. That's interesting. Thought
You
black
thought
could
black
play
could play
something
it.
like bishop b7,
Yeah.
and then the knight on b6 isn't attacked anymore.
It looks like black can just barely survive. Yeah, none of the black pieces are overworked. They're all very close to being
Yeah,
overworked, but I don't see any series of captures that gets the job done. Very importantly, the knight will take, keeping
right.
the rook glued to the bishop. And yeah, it doesn't get the job done. You're right, Ben. So in the game, we
Yeah,
had
David
bishop
played bishop
c6, which
c6.
is, mhm. And you like this move, Ben?
Yeah, I like it because now black has to either give up the back rank or give up the idea of e5. So I like that move.
Tough decision.
You
So
give up the
I can
back rank.
understand the reason for this move. Yeah, your bishop has gone nowhere the entire game, literally nowhere. It hasn't moved and gone backward. It's been a bystander for 23 moves, and you're still hoping to play e5. So now the natural line to analyze, Ben, you're going to have to help me. Rook to d8,
Mhm.
because as you said, white gains control of the eighth rank. But is it just an empty rank, or does this pin actually mean something?
Yeah, black could still try to play e5.
Okay.
Oh, it doesn't like
Uh,
that. Wow.
Tactical problem, but what's the tactic? Let's see what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
One of
what
the
it
knights.
is either.
Yeah, I don't see, but we're gonna stay here till we find it because this is like one of our first tactics of the day. David is playing such good 19th century chess. We haven't had very many tactics at all today, but something is in the air here.
I mean, f5 looks normal because you stop the counterplay, but I don't know why that would be such a big advantage.
Agree with you there. Knights coming to d5 just looks like a complete wholesale trade of knights. I don't see what
Right.
that does. Total,
I mean, if
total
I was what,
mystery.
I'd play f5.
Okay.
If the engine says that's terrible.
Actually, no. It is a positional idea. Engine says F5 is almost certainly the best move because the eval bar stays where it is at +3. Amazing that black has been short of space all game, but within the, close to the margins of drawing, at least,
Mhm.
and then suddenly finally gets E5 in, and the computer says black is worse by 3 points. Amazing.
Yeah, white's going to play g4, and that's going to be annoying. I mean, black doesn't really have any moves.
Yeah, G4, G5, exactly right. Okay. The slow burn gets the job done. So if we go back to the game, let's see if any moves have been made. In fact, he goes for a kind of a similar plan. He doesn't wait for E5 to happen, but
Mhm.
he goes ahead and plays G4 anyway. She responds with Rook C7, and we are in our live position. Okay, Rook C7 stops Rook D8 because the bishop
Mhm.
is loose. We won't go back and look at it, but suffice to say, if she had traded on G4 and then played E5, F5 still would have happened with very,
Right.
very similar play. So yeah, that's why she didn't do it.
Well, the question is, does he play g5 here, or something like bishop f3? Maybe just G5 and
Great
then
question.
the knight on E4.
Yep, knight moves, knight comes into e4. Okay. Again, the positional approach. Megan, by the way, she's won gold before in Rapid and Blitz at the Under 12 Girls Championship in 2024 at the
Mhm.
World Youth Championship. And by the way, she also was a member of the Columbia Grammar National High School winning team this past year. Teammates with Tani, by the way. First ever time that Columbia Grammar won the National High School Championship, which is kind of surprising. They've had their fair share of
Right.
grandmasters go to their school, including Mark Arnold, Hans Niemann. I'm sure there are others that I can't remember, but a belated congratulations to Megan and Tani for being a member of that national championship team.
That's a tough team.
It is. And if you're wondering how could they possibly be teammates, well, Columbia Grammar is a K-12 school. And even though Tani's in high school and Megan's in sixth grade, she played up into the high school section
Mhm.
to help her teammates. Their team was led by international master Nico Chassin, who I think is taking a gap year to play some chess. I talked to his dad after the tournament. So
Mhm.
that's a pretty good chess school right there.
Yeah.
Coached by Joel Benjamin.
It's all about the Benjamins.
It is in this case, for sure. Also coached by Fidel Corrales. I should not forget him. Okay, so bishop to
Hey,
f3, simply
let's
guarding.
go to the Bodhana game because I see a pawn missing. I'm
Uh-oh.
confused.
Okay, if you're confused, I'm confused. Let's
I
go
don't
over.
I don't see a pawn.
Okay. Yeah, and she had what we thought was the most stable position. This is the live position, but obviously we want to back up and figure out how did he
The pawn's
steal her
gone.
e-pawn off the board?
Yeah.
It could be that the rook is overworked. Okay, let's back up just a little bit more. So in this position, Ben, I don't think she appreciated that after the rook's doubled,
Hmm.
this rook is needed to guard that rook and guard the pawn. I guess the queen is like trying to do the exact same job, but she inhibits her ability for that by playing knight to d7. Now, clearly the queen is not guarding, and this rook is a classic overworked piece.
Hmm.
So we had takes, takes, and the only reason he's making all these trades is to get the rook off of the e-file. Goes ahead and makes a trade, captures a pawn, and that, yeah, that was just a straight up puzzle rush tactic. And
Hmm.
unfortunately for Bodhana, the bishops did come to life. Remember, we said we didn't think the bishops had targets? Well, turns out e7 was that target.
Yeah.
Okay, these are just the remaining moves. So now Bodhana obviously is still trying to hold on, make a draw, but the best thing she can do at least is to play 50 more moves and make David's clock run down. He is down to 25 minutes on his on what I think is the most complicated board, the Supratit board. He's
Hmm.
got as much as 31 minutes in this game, and in his other two games, he's got around 28 minutes or so.
Yeah, definitely there's gonna be some fireworks when time trouble happens. But yeah, he's looking good on this board. Extra pawn, two bishops, isolated D5 pawn. Yeah, it's a question of does he have good technique with playing so many games at once?
Another question is, does he have good technique without his glasses? Because the chat is saying, two-thirds of chat is saying that his elo goes down 200 points without glasses. I'm assuming they did a deep dive on all of his commentary gigs over the last 5 years. David not wearing glasses today. And David,
Yeah,
maybe that
that's why he
means
looked
you're a,
different to me. I couldn't figure out why. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't even pick up on that too. So good job, chat. So the chat is saying that he's 2460, not 2660, or maybe he's actually 2680. But yeah, we'll see if that ends up being an issue. By the way, we mentioned his most complicated game was against Supratit, and Supratit has a peak Chess.com puzzle rating of 4014. That's not good. You're playing a kid with a 4000 puzzle rating, and you're getting in a complicated position, and your time is dwindling down. By the way, his clock is ticking on three of the four boards at the moment. Bodhana is the only one right now who does not have the clock ticking on David's board. Actually, this is interesting, Ben. Even though we said the players are not talking to each other, they can look at the other games. They
Hmm.
can see that his clock is ticking on all the other boards, and that honestly, sort of a +1 level of thinking, maybe that induces her to make a move here. Bishop h6. There we go. We see it on the board.
Yeah, so now his clock's running on all four boards. That's not good.
Yeah,
Positions
let's
are
go to the
good, but
bird's eye actually, and It's true. But again, it's a clock simul. If the kids can just keep, as Malkovich says, hanging around, then it's going to
Mhm.
get a lot harder for David. If we look at the bird's eye, we'll be able to see the clock ticking on all four boards. It is still happening as I speak. So, not good for the old man there. Sorry, David. I know you can't hear me, but you just got called an old man.
Yeah, he knows. We all know when we're old.
We
It's
certainly
funny. It
do.
seems like Marco is fighting back and has a nice position now in his game. He's putting a lot of pressure on the C4 pawn.
Let's jump into that game. He's got that same expression that he had in the Chess Kid Youth Championship. Like he's the most locked in as far as like
Mhm.
his expression on the board. So let's move over and do a zoom into that bottom right board. Marco has just traded on C4. And man, to my eye, it looks like white's pawn on C4 is gonna be weaker than black's pawn on C5. Maybe it's a tenable position, but a little bit happier for black to play.
Yeah. Yeah, he got his knights to good squares to attack the C4 pawn. And Howell's rook B3 didn't turn out to be very good. The engine didn't like it. Then he had to go back to B1. So black is fully equalized here, and I think he's trying to seize the initiative.
Yeah, and if we set aside the Supratit game, which is taking on a character all of his own, David has been playing three sort of, very slow maneuvering games on the other three boards, but Marco is the only one that has come up with a really cogent, defined plan to get the knights to attack the C4 pawn. And so David is suffering a little bit by not recognizing the fact that this double knight attack on c4 is going to be a little bit of an issue. So you're going to have a liability. Ben, I guess the question is, do you trade one set of knights? It feels more proper to trade one set of knights than to take back with the pawn right away, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't like my knight on D2 being passive. So I probably would trade a set of knights before taking on C4 with a pawn.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't like
And
my knight
I
on D2. So
and I would I mean, actually, I don't even know, but I would guess that black takes with the side knight just on general principles, but there's an argument that your knight there is on a reasonable outpost, and that maybe you should take this way. I'm taking back everything I said. I'm going to use the Hikaru. And having said that, Ben, having said that, which knight would you take with?
I guess I take with the D knight,
Okay,
but it's a tough decision. If somehow my knight on A5 isn't doing anything, I can play knight C6. So it's not a big deal.
that's true.
Probably doesn't matter
One
very
good
much in the long run.
One good news for white is that when you've got same color bishops and these are the weakest pawns on the board, at least white's weak pawn is on a light square.
Mhm.
Not that this bishop is in any position to be targeting c5 just yet, but if all the rooks and queens leave the board, I admit that would make c4 quite weak. But I'm just thinking about general principles here, those weak pawns and the colors of the bishops. We've got some moves actually. D takes, nullifying everything we said. Rook to b4, triple attacking, and it should be noted if you take, then the pawn takes discovered attack on this pawn. So we had a3. Finally, the rooks stop playing peekaboo. One captured the other one. And now white, I'm assuming, will take with the rook, but we've been wrong in the last two or three moves, so we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll take with the rook. So I'll be wrong too.
I've got to say, time to get worried, David Howell fans. I think his clock situation is becoming a thing. The kids have not spent much time since we last looked at their clocks. They've all got between, let's say, 6 and 8 minutes, rounding off a little bit. But David is dipping below. He's almost below 20 minutes in Super Teats board, and he's on the south side of the 25-minute mark on most of the boards. So again, it always looks like he's healthy, but remember, he's got four complicated positions with only a noticeable advantage, I would say, in that Bodhana game.
Yeah, let's look at the
And Ben,
Supratit game because he always sacked the exchange. And the engine didn't like it.
totally agree. Saw the eval bar get my attention, got Ben's attention too. We haven't looked at this game in a couple of moves, so I do want to back up and see what prompted this exchange sacrifice. We saw h6. I think this may have been where we left off.
Mhm.
Rook takes b3. Just annoyed by the knight. Get out of here, knight. Pawn takes, queen takes, and knight f6. We're in our live position, and I gotta say, Ben, sacking the exchange doesn't even help you with your queenside expansion. I'm a little bit confused by it.
Yeah, I don't like this exchange sack, and I like all exchange sacks. Um, yeah, it's not clear what White should be doing now. White, by playing knight b5 earlier, made sure he could never play c5. So now I think it's too late. I don't know what White should do here. This just seems good for Black. Black's rook on a8's on the half open file now. Uh, so we don't have to really move it anywhere. It's okay where it is. So yeah,
And you
I
know
just
what? I
like
think it's
Black
time.
here.
Totally agree. And I think it's time we put another poll up because it's been about 45 minutes since we did this last, and we've got a lot that has happened since then. So if I could please have Akshansh put another poll up about what they think the final score will be or who they think will win, I would love to see if the results have changed. And I'm sorry, Akshanth, I realize I confused you with Ashwanth, who is a 9-year-old boy from Singapore, but he just got an IM norm. So, not the worst 9-year-old boy to confuse you with, but I do appreciate the fantastic work that our mods and our helpers in chat do. And while we've got a moment to pause for station identification, we usually thank our producer at the end, but Alex Dmitrievich, it's his birthday today, and he's
Yay.
producing the show. Thank you, Alex. I know you're drinking coffee, doing your thing right now while you run our show, but thank you for working on your birthday. Okay, back to chess. Knight to e4 on the board. Computer doesn't like it. Looks very natural. I guess you're having trouble playing f5, f4 now because the knight's going to be a little bit loose, but it's just a nice centralization square for the knight.
Yeah, it looks good. Um, yeah, the engine says all moves are dubious and bad, but that move looks completely reasonable. I guess White played a4 to play c5 later. The knight's defended. Knight e4 seems to put pressure on c5. So that
Mhm.
makes sense to me.
Yep, totally makes sense. White's been hoping for c5 for quite a while, finally in a position to play it, and black stops it, but the computer doesn't like it. Remember, when the computer flashes up glyphs that include question marks, it doesn't necessarily mean the move is poor. It might have just been that there was a better move. So don't take too much stock in the double glyph situation, which is what's happening right here. So we have knight to d2. Now, if we get a glyph combined with the eval bar going crazy, that's when we know that perhaps one of those vaunted one move blunders has happened. I should say, David has not made one move blunders yet. That was his big fear.
Mhm.
So, David, you're getting a little low on time, but so far, your greatest fear has not come to pass.
Yeah, knight d2 is a normal looking move also. Man, the engine's tough. It doesn't like any moves. The knight d2 looks right and natural to me.
Yeah, it's like, well, what are you supposed to do as white? Just sit around? It's not like in a position where you just
Mhm.
move around. Knight with the idea of c4 or c5. You want to get rid of the knight to be able to play c5 and
Mhm.
finally get your puppies going. By the way, the queen is lined up with the king. Just, kind of file that away in the back of your mind in case that ends up being a thing later on. Black is going to have trouble ever taking because of discovered check, just in case c5 happens. So, all right, I'm going to do a quick check of the clocks. Gotta say, the kids are still managing their time, I think, a little bit better, proportionally. All the kids have more than 5 minutes. Megan's got 7.5 minutes, and David is now down to basically 20 minutes or less on all four boards.
Yeah, the
I
kids are
guess
doing a good job keeping the games going and keeping them interesting and hoping that David gets in time trouble.
I do see Supratit wearing a Fortnite shirt. I have not picked up on that until now. Um, our rules do not cover playing Fortnite during the match. I think you're allowed to. I wouldn't recommend it, but knowing kids these days, it's possible. By the way, we I'm wondering, is there any chess in Fortnite? I don't know if you know, Ben, if any of the chat knows.
I don't know anything about Fortnite,
There
but you can
might
ask
be.
me in 2 weeks.
Okay. Oh, I think I know why. Yes, Ben and I will be hanging out with lots of esporters very soon. But until that day comes, we'll go back to the game. All right, now the knight just toggles back. I don't think that's a draw offer or anything crazy like that. So don't get too excited.
Yeah, knight
But
f6 seems okay. Yeah.
Okay, Bodhana's only got 4.5 minutes left. I know she was just down a pawn. I am curious to see how difficult she is making life for David. So I'm going to scoot on over to Bodhana's game. I'm probably not going to stay there that long, but I do want to see what she's been able to do. Yeah, just mostly static pawn structure. Um, I mean, David's probably going to win this one. He's got to win at least one to win the match. Clearly, this is his best chance. The question is, how quickly can he finish this off? Because that matters a lot considering his clock situation. I would say if he could get rid of this game in the next 5 minutes, that greatly improves his chances
Mhm.
to winning the overall match, getting to 2.5 points.
Yeah, I don't see him winning in the
And
next 5 minutes. This looks like it's another, he'll win eventually, but not quickly.
okay, let's take a look at the game against the highest rated player. Let's go over to Marco's game as we go around the carousel really quickly. Marco being his highest rated opponent, at least on paper. And this is where we last saw the game with rook takes.
Mhm.
The rook did take. Actually, the players have made a lot of moves. We had a challenge of the rook on the b file. Now we have what we call the staring contest in Chess Kid land, where neither rook
Mhm.
wants to capture because the other person's queen would control the file. So black blinks first, but then the knight takes back. Okay, so the queen prefers the d file, and we just have some very slow maneuvering here. Knight e4, knight takes, queen takes control of the open file, bishop c3, f5, forcing the queen off of the strong center square, and queen c2. Computer says totally equal. Black's queen is better. White's bishop is better. Who would you rather be, Ben?
Yeah, I don't think I would care. I think it's just equal. I don't really see an advantage for either side. So I
Well,
think
this
equal is correct.
Yeah, and I wonder that I'm just gonna make a prediction here. If the players start repeating moves, recognizing that they're equal, Marco would be such a good teammate by not acquiescing to the draw because he's not going to lose this position unless he makes a big blunder. Neither is David. But again, we're on move 31, and a 70 move draw helps his team so much more than, let's say, a 30 or 35 move draw. Okay. Ben, where do you want to go next? I guess Megan, right? We haven't looked at Megan in a while. We've looked
Yeah,
at the
we haven't
other
looked
three
at
games.
Megan and she's defending really well.
Okay. My cat just sneezed, so my cat is allergic to whatever chess game is on the screen. And you're right, she got the bishop out. I'm not going to go back and see how because, frankly, we're getting a little bit low on the clock and we've missed a bunch of moves. But congrats to her for getting the bishop out. Pawns are completely symmetrical, just a very, very slight space disadvantage. If the king is able to invade, that's
Mhm.
probably the biggest concern, but as long as c5 is on lockdown, the king has no path to those queenside pawns just yet.
Yeah, Megan did well to trade rooks and get her king to the center and get her bishop out. So yeah, White's still better. White's king is more advanced and possibly could get to the queen side. But looks like with correct play, Black should draw. Good defense by Megan.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, if Bodhana loses but loses in another 30 moves, if Marco extends his drawing position out for many more moves, if Megan can hold this, Superteat's got the better position. I do see a path to the kids getting a 2-2 tie. I'm making a lot of guesswork here, a lot of prognostications well ahead of time. But so far, if you take all four boards into consideration at the exact same time, I think it's about an equal match. So we're
Mhm.
going to tabulate those results from what I asked a few minutes ago about who they think is better, who chat thinks is better. Um, but really, really interesting stuff so far. I did not predict that the match would come out this way, but we're a long way away from the finish.
The engine doesn't like the way Supratit is playing, and it says that David's better now with his exchange down.
Well, let's take let's go back to what we missed. I believe we last looked at the position after the knight toggled back to f6.
Mhm.
Now I went
Right.
back to f3, which is a tacit draw offer, but Supratit does not want the draw. He takes. Now, he's had this trade in his pocket for quite some time. Why he's doing it now, I wonder if he was just running out of ideas. And the pawn took this way, nullifying the ability to play c5, But now the c7 pawn is going to be a target for a
Mhm.
long time. Queen d7, rook over, and wow, every single move, the eval bar is changing between white is better and black
Yeah.
is better.
It just seemed like
And
normal moves to me.
yeah, the capture away from the center, interestingly, that came up in the Anna Kramling Dina Belankaya match that I commentated on this weekend. By the way, that episode just dropped an hour before our broadcast. Don't go watch it now. I want you to watch it on Anna Kramling's channel, but not right now. But Dina won a game by capturing away from the center, which is the winning
Mhm.
move, and Anna didn't see it. And it's not exactly the same thing here, but a similar idea. The control of the open file was more important for white than anything else.
Yeah.
I got to be
Yeah,
honest with you, Ben.
this game, all three results could happen.
I don't understand because, yeah, c7 can be a target, but black has more rooks than white. And also, black still has the ability to push pawns and create tension on the king side, whereas I guess white could play for a5. That must be the thing, is that you're not actually targeting c7, but you're putting a rook on the a file and playing for a5 once you guard b5. I don't know. I don't really get why this pawn structure is so awesome for white.
Yeah, it seems like David is just waiting for Supratit to do something. And Supratit keeps moving his knight back and forth. So he's not doing anything to ruin his position.
That's
And
true.
then
The
David's
interesting thing, though, is in a
down.
regular game, you would say he's out of ideas, but by passing the turn to his opponent over and over in a clock simul, it
Yeah.
actually has some merit.
Mhm.
Okay, now all four kids are getting in the 5 minute range or less, with Bodhana only having 2.5 minutes. So let's go to the bird's eye and look at all four games at the same time. If David is going to be asked to play four games, we can certainly try to commentate on four games. The sun is set in France. Marco is going dark. I'm sure he can still see his screen. And the knight finally traded in the Supratit game. Okay, he's down to 3 minutes 45 seconds. Megan dips below 5 minutes. Um, David, I would say in the last couple of minutes has maybe done a little bit better on the clock than the kids.
Mhm.
So he's got 17 or 18 minutes in all the games except for the Super Teat game. He's got 14 minutes. Super Teat is still nervous. He's biting his nails there a little bit. So either he doesn't like his position or something's gone wrong in the Minecraft game that he's playing in the background.
Sounds like my stepkids. Um, yes, I think David should be happy with what's happened the last 5 minutes or so. Time situation's okay, his positions are okay. So against Bodhana, he's probably winning.
I just got some late intel that there's a third clock simul David played in his past. Remember, he played a 10 board against a bunch of IMs and did really well. He played a
Mhm.
30 board against a bunch of kids who conspired against him to make him run back and forth across the room. And I've just found out he once played a women's national team, but he asked me not to explain anything more than that. um, Apparently, the result didn't go so great. But anyway,
Mhm.
right now he's playing four of the best chess kids in the world, two of the strongest English players, the very strong, I think, number one rated girl of her age in the world, Megan Paragua, sixth youngest woman to become an FM all time, and one of the hopes of the next generation of French chess international master, Marco Materia. But he's got his hands full now in this Super Teat game. Rook A7, that rook is taken on a very passive setting.
Yeah, it just defends the C7 pawn. I guess black can try to double rooks and attack on A4. Um, White has
That's
two
right.
bishops. White has a pawn for the exchange. And the engine doesn't like any moves that the players are making. So it seemed like completely natural moves to me.
Yeah, me as well. And remember, if this rook goes to A1, you might play E4. Now, black is missing the light squared bishop, so it makes far more sense for black to
Mhm.
put the pawns on the light squares than on the dark squares. So we might see E4. These pawns have been waiting for their moment to shine for quite some time.
Yeah, they've been pretty good where they are. And every move, Howell has to calculate what happens if black moves them. Then black never moves them, so he has to keep calculating it. So that's actually good for black. That white has to
Somebody
be worried about it, and black never does it.
somebody in chat brought up if David wins or maybe loses all the games, can we bring it up? I will say it's how can I put this? There's not a lot to be gained by playing four kids live in front of thousands and thousands of people, but especially David, who's a live commentator, and he's got, his buddies, Tanya and all the other co-commentators that could bring this up if they wanted to. So he's really putting himself out there. I just want to say thank you, David, for your bravery. Thank you to all of the grandmasters who put themselves out there for Kids versus Stars.
Wow, and he played A5, sacrificing the B5 pawn, and the engine says it's good.
Okay, well, so if takes, takes, takes. You sacrificed, but you finally got a passed pawn. And I guess you can keep shepherding that pawn because the bishops, I don't know, I guess this is the move. Attacking the queen, helping the pawn get further up. This rook is running out of squares in case of here. And of course, Ben's got the tactic on lockdown. If the queen takes, Ben, what happens?
I assume bishop C4 is a good move.
So the bishops, yeah, do come alive. And I didn't see that. I didn't see that sacrificing the pawn for the bishops to help the A pawn down the board was a thing, but I think it is. In fact, Supratit doesn't even take. He just simply plays E4. It's interesting to me that taking the B pawn helps the light squared bishop come to life, and both players have realized that. So the pawn comes forward. The bishop does guard this completely empty diagonal. And it is game on here. I really don't know what's going to happen. Bodhana still down a pawn and still suffering on the clock, but hanging around to help her team. Marco still equal, but only a buck 46 on the clock. Megan is now slightly worse, but has 4 minutes on the clock. Let's go back to the bird's eye because we have not had a kids versus stars event yet where all four games have been going on for so long. That's bad news for David, but he's managing his clock reasonably. And there we see the kids' times. You can't see David's time on all four boards, but I'll just tell you he's got about 15 minutes on three of the boards, and he's got 10 minutes on that super T board in the top left of the screen. I guess we can name the boards by color. So his brown board, he's got less time on. The other boards, a little bit more. I will say, Ben, if you look at the bottom right there, there's been a little bit of movement in that Marco board. Remember, all the play was on the queen side for quite some
Mhm.
time. And it looks like now we have a little bit of asymmetry on the king side um, because the queen has entered and black's pawns have gotten, they're a little bit loose, but the computer is saying that black can hold on to all the pawns. But queen
Yeah,
b8
the knight on
check.
D2 is hanging, and if you move the knight, then black has queen D1, queen F3 perpetual. So should be okay for black.
Exactly. Because of the tempo on the knight, those pawns are immune from capture. But okay, some movement. In fact, because the computer says equal and it's a clock sign, well, I keep bringing this up, how important it is to remember the format. This is better for the kids because White actually has to do a lot of thinking here about how to hold the equality. He can't just make a lot of symmetrical moves. So
Mhm.
I'm getting nervous for David. I wouldn't want to be in his situation right now with all four boards going on.
Yeah, you'd like to have at least one game over by now.
Yeah, even if it's a draw, just to have one game that you don't have to think about anymore.
Mhm.
He would take three draws on three boards and play the Bodhana game. I'm sure if I offered
Yeah.
him that at this point, he would sign up for that.
Yeah, that sounds good for David.
And you know what else? Ben, this has happened at least one other time today. His clock is ticking on all four boards. I'm looking at all
Wow.
four, and that's not a good situation to be in.
Oh,
But we'll keep it here. He's trying to figure out perhaps which queen check to play. If he wants to go for a perpetual, there's no forced perpetual. This king can start walking around the queen. He's thinking about maybe entering the knight endgame, but if he does, the c pawn's quite weak. I don't know what I would do, either in classical chess or in a clock simul. I don't know what's easiest to do in this position. Do you trade queens? I don't think you do.
I think he can get a draw by playing queen g8, queen g7. And
Okay.
then if you play king d6, you're not attacking my knight anymore. If you play
Okay.
king d8, I can take on f6 with check. So I think he has to
Ah,
play king e8, and then we have perpetual on e8 and g8 and g7. Yeah.
very good point. I said incorrectly to the viewers, you could walk around the queen, but now it's check. And now you don't want to play black. And as you said, if you go here, there's no attack on the knight, so you would lose this pawn or maybe even this one. But yeah, that's a good point. So maybe he's gauging whether or not to take the draw against the highest rated player. In fact, now that you've pointed out that line, remember, he may not be looking at this board. I can't tell by his eyes which board he's looking
Mhm.
at.
Yeah.
Um, I think he's going to play it if he sees it, if he comes back to this board. I'll put it that way because
I think
no,
that's the
he's playing the
smart thing
highest.
to do. Get rid of
Yeah,
one board.
yeah, completely agree. Looking at the clocks now, he at least made a move on the Supratit game. So, okay, he's played the Queen G8 move. Let's stay here for a second because we might see a repetition. Now, Marco played King E7 right away. You know what you might do if you're Marco? You might wait 10 seconds, hope that David would switch to another game, and then play King E7. Okay, but David is glued into this position. He's repeated, I guess we can't say he's repeated once because the queen came from H7 the first time, but he looks to be going for a repetition here. We'll see. Might be our first game to finish. Yeah,
Yeah, the
Marco
other three
knows that.
boards, other three boards, David's doing great position wise.
Okay, well, this is the second coming of this position. So we're counting two, although the Chess.com live server counts for us. Not like me and Ben, we used to have to count for ourselves by
Mhm.
looking at our notation sheet. We won't talk about the old days of chess.
Yeah, it looks like David's going to infiltrate against Megan and win that game. Looks like his king
Okay,
can
let's
come
go over to
in.
that game.
Yeah.
If in fact they do repeat, maybe not the most critical moment for us to watch since we see it happening. Let's go over to the Megan game and see how his space advantage has turned into a possibly winning advantage. We mentioned a long time ago, if the king could invade, that might be the difference. And it looks like the king is in fact about to do just that. Let's uh, let's see how it happened here. Last time we saw this game was around this position, with the knight being the most important defender of the c5 square. So white obviously wants to trade that knight off to get the king in the game. And then the pawns trade. And it's just really hard to keep a knight guarding the c5 square.
Yeah.
Ah, the knight goes the other way. And now your knight cannot take because after pawn takes, if I can draw that arrow, the king gets to c5. But if you move your knight, the king just moves there.
Hmm.
Very clever maneuvering by the veteran. If I can call David a veteran, I think I can.
Yeah. Yeah, David's just deciding whether to play king c5 now or to play knight c6 check and take on a5. Both look good. I think he'll play king
Okay, so
c5.
it's actually getting critical because if I were to take all four games as a whole, Marco does not determine his own fate anymore. David can take the draw if he wants it. Megan is much worse. Bodhana's been
Mhm.
down a pawn for a while. That's your 2.5 points right there. If we just close the book on those three games, still a lot of chess left. I can officially announce David did take the draw against Marco with Queen G8, Queen G7, Queen G8, Queen G7, just like we predicted. So he's in the books. He has a draw against a top-rated player, and he's doing well in two out of the three remaining games, and not doing that badly in the third game, about equal.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, black gave the exchange back, and they have obviously colored bishops in the Supratit game.
Well, let's jump over there and see exactly how that happened. Okay, we're going to go back a couple of moves and see exactly how the exchange was sacrificed back. So the pawns, we stopped in around this position after e4, and Supratit was getting annoyed by the pawns, and I think we started to understand why. So he decided to sack the exchange back. Very practical decision. b5 is weak, and now we have a not terribly common queen and opposite colored bishop endgame,
Mhm.
but hard to imagine a lot of the pawns leaving the board, except maybe white has this g4 idea going after this pawn one day. But you got to be careful. If you weaken your own dark squares, you might self-mate if you're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah, this seems like it's pretty balanced. Black's bishop is going to be really strong on e5. Materials equal, opposite bishops. Seems like it should be a draw. But David has to play 3 games. He only has 5 minutes left.
Yeah, in fact, we have not seen this yet in our other two iterations of Kids versus Stars, but if the kids got down to three endgames, which were all going on with all parties having less than a minute left, that's
Mhm.
a little bit hard for David to be balancing three
Yeah.
games at once.
Yeah, 5 minutes is not a lot of time when you're playing 3 games.
He does get 15-second increment every move, just like the kids do. You may wonder why the kids get so much increment when they're only playing one game. Our live server requires it. You can't give one person one increment and one person another increment. Not something that we thought of when we programmed the live server and not a very common thing. Okay, so white puts all the pawns on dark squares to help control those dark squares. This move h4 tells me that white is sort of happy with stasis, not ever going for g4. But the bishop goes to the strongest square. I guess black's position is a little bit easier to play if you ask me. Only because I see a threat. Queen e7, queen takes pawn. But anyway, it's just a thing to think about. Okay, now same threat for white. Queen takes e4 was a threat because this pawn was pinned, and black very quickly sidesteps that threat.
Things
So
have
while
really
these,
changed in David's game with Megan. David has 2 connected pass pawns on the queen side, and he's ready to push.
yeah, looks really tough for her. She does have two against one herself, but it's going to take her a long time. Her pawns are a country mile away from the other side of the chessboard. Let's jump over there because it feels like her game might finish before this one.
Yeah.
Let's go over there and see. In fact, David's king did invade. Sorry, she's actually got three against one. My Zoom camera was covering the G pawn. Thanks a lot, Zoom. So she's not technically down a pawn anymore, but these two pawns have no roadblocks on their way to pay dirt.
Yeah, the A pawn just pushes. I don't see how you stop it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Even a clever knight sack, your pawns are still way, way too slow. So now I think she's literally just making moves to help her teammates. If I were her, I'd play really quickly here. I would just play like f6 or something. Not that it matters too much.
Never play F6. No.
Even even on move 48. Pro tip.
I-
Chessable course coming soon.
Mhm.
No, never play f6.
That's
Okay.
true. You were kidding,
Is
but
your
it's true.
wait,
And,
is your course about the f pawn?
no, my course is about my rules. So that's one of the
Okay.
rules.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. Um, well, let's jump over to Bodhana's game. She's been hanging tough to help her teammates to see if she's made any progress in that pawn down position. We see here she's still down the pawn and she's still keeping things pretty close to the vest. So she's actually, she's doing her job as a good teammate because this
Mhm.
position has not changed that much in the last 20 minutes or so, and that's what you want to be a good teammate.
Yeah, this is, I mean, in a
See
slow game,
David.
this is hopeless, but with this format, if you can keep hanging in there, then things can turn around.
Yeah, remember, David started with more than a 4-1 time advantage as per our rules. He's down to like a 2-1 or 3-1 time advantage. Um, 5 minutes to 2 minutes is a lot harder than 50 minutes to 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the situation he's facing. So the kids have to hang their hat on the clock now. They have to become speed demons to have a chance. Okay, Bodhana is starting to make moves a little more quickly. Of course, she kind of
Mhm.
has to. She only has 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Is there a sack, by the way? Is there a bishop takes idea coming up? We're getting close.
Probably not something you want to do with this time control.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work yet. Black is holding and these pieces are not playing apart. So That is not going to be what's played in the game. No way. Okay, let's go back to the Supratit game, that queen and bishop endgame, because the white
Hmm.
queen has invaded. Looks like white's b pawn is missing. So some things have happened in the Supratit game. Maybe the eval bar hasn't changed, but things are getting a little more spicy. Let's just go back a minute and see. So white sacrificed the b pawn to
Hmm.
invade with the queen to win the pawn back on f5. And you could take with the queen because after the queen's trade, there's no way to save the e pawn. But maybe he's thinking about taking with the bishop and applying some pressure to the king. I'm really not sure what his thought
Boy,
process
David's
is
getting
here.
low on time in this game. He's got 3 minutes.
Yep, that is a problem. He's actually, this is the first game where he's almost equal to his opponent in time. You don't want to be equal when you've got three boards remaining.
No.
For those of you wondering what you're watching, this is Kids versus Stars episode 5, where the commentator becomes the, what can I say? The, what do
Sacrificial
you,
lamb.
yeah, I was going to say, what does a shark chase? The prey. That was the word I was looking for.
Right.
He's playing facing four chess kids. He's already made a draw with Marco Matteria, the international master. And here he takes the solid approach. He does trade queens to win the e-pawn. But it's almost impossible to win this position because even though you've got an extra pawn, you have to keep an eye on this one. This extra pawn can never get past the e5 square. So black really can just probably leave the king on this square, move his bishop back and forth forever.
Yeah.
I'm going to say black could lose this pawn and still draw the game with
Right.
minimal effort.
Yep. Yeah, it's a draw without the B pawn. That's right.
So other than the clock situation, I would say things are going pretty good for David here because he's made a draw. This is an easy draw that you can, other than the clocks, you can make in your sleep. And he's got very favorable position against Megan, which is probably going to end any moment
He
now.
promoted against Megan. He's up a queen now.
Okay. Megan doing our job by playing to checkmate. But I think David is going to pull this out. Unless Bodhana can win her pawn down position, there's no way Black can win the position we're looking on the board up
Mhm.
here. There
Yeah.
we go to the bird's eye view. We want to thank Megan for taking time out of her schedule. I think she's been running around Europe playing in a whole bunch of tournaments, and she took time out to play our event. So we love to see her there. And she's a really, really fun person to interview and a great personality. Along with Alice Lee and Carissa Yip, some of the other young women stars, Talia Cervantes, got a lot of young American women. Um, Rose Atwell. We're stacked in the USA women's team for many years to come.
Hmm. Yeah.
Very, very promising future.
Yeah. The players can't agree to a draw. So I don't know, to find some repetition.
Yeah, it's one of those positions where if you were over the board, you would kind of look at your opponent and you would agree to move your bishops back and forth without actually saying a word, but can't really do that. And remember, you are helping by playing 50 moves here,
Yeah.
helping your teammates. Well, let's go to the Bodhana game. It might be the only one that really has anything left to be looking at.
Yeah.
And Bodhana is in the unfortunate situation of probably having to win this game for the kids to tie the match.
Hmm. That's right.
If David pulls this out, and of course wins the queen up game against Megan, David would actually have the highest score of any of the three grandmasters that we've had compete.
Hmm.
Anish and Danya both scored 2.5 to 1.5, both losing to Alice Lee, who's unfortunately not available today. And David would score 3. Now, let me ask the chat. First of all, I know you're going to say Magnus. I get that. But who do you want to see be the next grandmaster play against four kids? I guess it doesn't need to be a
Not me.
grandmaster. Somebody last time did, not Ben.
I vote
Ben
for
has taken
anybody but
himself out of
me.
the running.
Yeah.
Noted. So no Ben, no Magnus. Somebody last time did suggest Alice Lee, where the kid becomes the star, and I get that, and I like that. So let's hear some other names. Throw us some names in the chat. We've got Hikaru, we've got Hess, Messier Miel. I think that means Messier Honey in French, voted for you. So sorry, Feingold, but you got voted. Fausti Oro, that'd be cool. Gukesh, okay. Fabi, Levy, and then somebody threw some shade at Levy. By the way, did this episode get released yet? No, never mind. What I was going to say about Levy, I'm not going to say anymore.
We have a
There's
lot of
nothing
levies
bad.
in my chat.
You do. Okay, we've got Anand, we've got Bortnik. Okay, Vidit, that'd be good. Now, traditionally, we mic up the star because they're streaming on their own. Vidit would be great to be streaming while playing against four kids. That'd be a good choice. Um, Levon, yeah, that would be good too. We need self-deprecation. Ho Yifan, Averbach. I'm not sure he's available.
No, he died a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He did stick around.
I'm gonna send a message to Danny with my suggestion.
And you want to make it public?
Yeah, Kramnik.
Got it.
See if
Yes.
Danny likes that suggestion.
Somebody said Will Smith. Yeah, Will just played against the Botez sisters. So that's a thought. Don't know that he's going to be great competition against four titled kids, but a good thought.
Somebody said
Um,
Polgar, but they didn't say which one.
Good point. And officially a draw in the game with Supratit.
Mhm.
We were expecting that. It was opposite colored bishops. The pawns were not moving anywhere. So David now has two draws, but that's actually a perfect situation to be in because he has plenty of time for his remaining games. He's got 4 minutes in this game, 7 minutes in the Megan Queen up game. It looks like he's actually going for two queens. And if he's able to beat Megan and at least not lose against Bodhana, he will win kids versus stars. Of course, we want to thank David for putting his hat in the ring against these kids. Even I don't play very many matches against kids. I played Tani once in a match, an official match on Chess Kid, but to play four kids at once, that's crazy. Thank you, by the way, for nobody mentioning me. Don't want to see an 0-4 result.
Somebody said Fun Master Mike in the chat earlier.
Oh, see, you're just making that up.
No, Ninja Editor. He said Fun Master Mike.
I don't know what would be the average elo of the kids of my opponents? Like 1600 to have a chance, maybe.
You can do it.
I will say this, Ben. I used to teach a camp in Atlanta, the Castle Camp, for 10 years in a row. And the camp would always start with a clock simul. You would play your homeroom group, and it's usually about 12 kids. And there'd always be one kid who didn't realize that in person, I can be a very type A teacher. I know the internet audience doesn't realize it, but in person, I can be very strict. And they don't know me yet. It's the first day at camp. There's always that one kid who's down a queen and just waits for me to be on the other side of the room with my back turned and then makes a move. And, they're just trying to beat me on the clock while I've got 11 of their games going. So, Ben, I figured out the perfect strategy for this kid in the clock simul.
Hmm.
I go grab a chair. I put the chair across from the kid and I sit down. And I look at the kid and I say, I don't care if I lose all 11 other games on the clock. I'm sitting here and I'm finishing this game with you. And I point to the kid and they always resign because they've never seen this side of me before. And and yeah, it works every time. So anybody out there playing on clock simul, you can use my contribution to simul clock theory.
And the truth hurts.
It does.
You can change your handle to Not So Fun Master Mike.
Indeed. But I'll stick with my fun-loving moniker.
Yeah, there we
All
go.
right. So if Bodhana had to hang her hat on some sort of winning idea here, what could it be? What could she possibly do here to get back some sort of chance?
There has to be a David Howell one move blunder.
Okay, well, let's try to find one. Knights are very good at making your opponents blunder. If the queen backs up and e3 simply hangs, if the queen goes here and you take with the queen, oh, that's actually bad because the bishop takes knight. All right, well, I'm trying for something. Bodhana, I'm helping you kind of come up with some sort of idea.
She's getting closer on the clock. That's good.
That is true. It looks like David has all but forgotten about the Megan game being up a queen. Again, it's not bad form to play down a queen when you're trying to help your teammate here.
Hmm. Yeah, it's Howell's move on both boards.
Now, Ben, I remember back in the day stories of when Kasparov was at the height of his powers, he needed special challenges, and he would play like the entire German national team in a clock simul. Do you remember
Hmm.
those
Yeah.
matches?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, we just had some big things happen. So, forgetting about history, knight takes d5. If you take with the queen, you lose your queen after bishop takes c4. But this move distracts the protection of the knight, and it kind of just looks like that wins a second pawn. She took, but is she going to lose her queen as a result? Almost. It's check, so the queen takes. Oh boy. Yeah, she tried to confuse the situation, but David was not going to be confused there. It's looking really, really good for the old man.
Hmm.
Almost certainly now on his path to winning 3-1 as he collects a piece against Bodhana. Bodhana has a peak FIDE of almost 2200. She only began playing chess during COVID, which is pretty amazing. She's actually number 16 on the worldwide girls Blitz rating list.
Hmm.
And remember in 2023, she actually won the women's prize at the European Blitz Championship. She was the highest scoring female, and in 2023, she must have been like 8 years old or something. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember hearing of her when she was 8.
By the way, when she played in the Olympiad last year, not only was she the youngest chess player ever to represent England, she was the youngest player in any sport ever to represent England. That is
Hmm.
pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And you can catch her in person if you happen to be in London this Sunday on July 13th. Starting at noon in Trafalgar Square is the fifth annual Chess Fest. I will be there along with some of my colleagues, and we go every single year. We're going to have lots of in-person events. Lots of top English players are going to be there. Gawain Jones, Harriet Hunt. There's going to be simuls, blitz events. There's going to be a transatlantic match where actually these two players, Bodhana and Supratit, are going to play against two North American players, and I'm going to put them up on the Jumbotron. So the chance to see chess in Trafalgar Square, it's so cool that the very first time that they had this event in 2021, I actually quarantined for 5 days just to be a part of it. Luckily, don't have to do that anymore. NHS, don't call me this year. I'm not going to pick up like I did a couple of years ago. But it's going to be pretty cool. Actually, she didn't lose a piece. I totally misspoke, but she still got this massive problem on the light squares.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is the first board where David has less time.
I didn't pick up on that. Somehow Megan is still hanging around,
Hmm.
but she can almost give up the ghost here because David, yeah, David does have a buck 40 52, so just a little bit below Bodhana. And he can't fall asleep. He can't forget about the fact that the Megan game is still going on. It is technically still going on. Okay, he just made a move. Crisis averted. I think you better blockade this pawn. Otherwise, when it comes forward again, you might lose your knight. But this pawn looks like a goner in a lot of variations.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, this is hopeless except for the time situation.
I've come up with a blunder though. If the queen moves to d6 and you go pawn grabbing and I move my knight and you fall asleep at the wheel, the bishop and the queen will both be lined up with
Hmm.
g3.
That's right.
David will not fall into that, but it's a thing. Mhm. Okay, so the queen
Now
takes, very
David's up
practical
2 queens
decision.
against Megan.
Yep, sorry, I did not mean to click on Megan's board. Apologies about that. But yeah, two queens, better than one. Now, Megan can promote, but she would lose her queen upon
Hmm.
promoting, so
Right.
she's fighting on as best she can. There we see. The two boys are done. The two ladies are still fighting. But Bodhana is down two pawns. Megan is down two queens. We are going to hear from David, by the way. We're going to ask him how tough of a challenge this was. So don't go anywhere when the match ends because we will be chatting with David. I'm sure he'll have a huge sigh of relief. 3-1 is a good score against these kids.
Yeah, no losses. That's pretty good.
He was in a little bit of trouble only once against Supratit, but I gotta say, gotta give kudos to David. He saw more than I did when it came to that queenside pawn phalanx coming down the board and how strong it would be. And then
Hmm.
Supratit made that practical decision to sacrifice the exchange back just to get those
Oh,
pawns
that
off
was
the
good.
board.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting game.
It was. Okay, so the king blockades, but this knight is not a
Yeah, bishop
real
d5 is
piece.
going to be annoying.
Super annoying. Not really sure what you're supposed to do about that.
Maybe
Okay,
yeah, you
she.
can take and play knight b6.
Oh, fascinating. But it looks like there's some sort of solution for white, whatever that solution is. Maybe you trap the knight. You take, the knight goes here. And what was I thinking? Actually, not sure. Maybe you just play bishop here and just take all the pawns.
Yeah, bishop f7, then throw in a5 after takes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then take the king side.
looks like a pretty good variation.
Yeah.
Okay, so takes, takes. Knight b6 did happen. I'm sure David will find that or something just as good. He has still not mated Megan. Megan is being a pest, and I mean that in the nicest, most sportsmanly way. She's doing exactly what you're supposed to do. By the way, I can't guarantee that Megan is looking at the other board. For all she knows, she may think that all three other games are going on. She may be so laser focused.
Hmm.
Okay, so bishop f7 did happen on the board. We expect king takes d6. Bodhana can go ahead and play it right away if she wants to. Okay, a5 did happen. All of our moves coming to light. Knight will probably go back to c8, but it barely matters because the entire king side is falling down here for Bodhana.
Hmm.
By the way, it looks like we did mention that David said it was a win-win playing against the top English juniors. Either he defends the shield or he gives them confidence. He's going to score 1.5 to a half against the two English players, the draw with Supratit, and it looks to be the win against Bodhana. His queens are flying around the board in the Megan game. She keeps on being on the precipice of promotion,
Yeah, I like
but
David's last move against Megan. That sort. Yeah, okay, that is it. And he won.
okay, so Megan has resigned. So now it is sorry, one, yeah, 2 points for David, 1 point for the kids. And Bodhana is hoping for an internet disconnection while her f5 pawn remains on the board. I believe we actually use US chess rules here, not FIDE. So if she loses her pawn and David disconnects, she does not win, even though the knight can set up a checkmate against the bishop. I believe those are FIDE rules, and we use US chess rules.
Hmm.
But don't quote me on that. It's been a long time since I've done a deep dive into our server, and sometimes things change. Anyway, we're just waiting on this one to finish up. David will win Kids versus Stars, episode 5. Okay, now the knight is self-trapped, but he kind of had to keep an eye on the A pawn. Bishop dominates the knight.
Yeah, you can resign now. Just I like f4. You know, the king just walks in.
Yeah,
Flex.
I actually Bodhana plays all the way to checkmate, even in classical chess games sometimes.
Uh-huh.
That's been a thing of hers for a while. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So irrespective of this being a clock simul, she's probably just kind of used to playing to checkmate anyway. Okay, but she does resign here. Um, it says 3-0. I'm not sure if they had some false starts in the games or whatever, but the final score is actually 3-1. David scores 2 wins and 2 draws. He is the first of the stars to not drop a game and win without any losses. So 2 wins, 2 draws. He defends the shield and he wins 3-1. Thanks to all of our kids, but we're going to say goodbye to them. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Bodhana. Thank you, Supratit. And thank you, Marco. Marco, by the way, jumped in at the last minute. We do appreciate that, Marco. But we're going to hear from David when we come back. We're going to hear how hard this event was for him. So don't go anywhere. We get the commentator on the hot seat after this short break in Kids versus Stars, episode 5. We'll see you soon. Welcome back, everybody. It is the fun time where we all get to relax a little bit. I am here with the Kids versus Stars winner, the star being Grandmaster David Howell. And of course, I'm joined by my co-commentator, Grandmaster Ben Feingold. David, there's been about 5 minutes of relief on your face while we've looked at this interview. Tell us your overall thoughts on the match. Winning 3-1, by the way, biggest score ever.
Yeah, relief is the word, as you say. I was actually panicking. I was up all night, could barely sleep, just fearing these kids. Yeah, halfway through the match, I was freaking out a bit, especially about one of the boards. I couldn't see any good moves, and I decided to postpone any decisions until the last possible second. But yeah, the kids played so well. Really interesting games, and yeah, I've just got to say sorry to you, Mike, to Ben as well, and to my opponents for dragging out some of the games. I just don't know how to win quickly. I don't know how to go for the attack. Yeah, that's just who I am. But it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for doing this. I know there's not a lot to be gained by playing four kids, and also the kids elongated their games against you. So it come about as fair play, as they say. Let me ask you like the most softball question ever. What's more stressful, commentating on the best players in the world or playing against four kids in front of 10,000 people?
Oof, it's not even a question. There's a reason kids have a reputation these days, and I mean, playing chess is stressful at the best of times, but especially when yeah, these youngsters are out to get you, out to kill you. And yeah, I mean, commentary these days feels like second nature, but playing is another level of tough. Yeah, there's a reason I've stepped back a bit from playing, but actually, I do quite enjoy it once the clocks start. And especially today, like in the middle games, I was like, "Whoa, chess is so rich, chess is so interesting." But yeah, when the clocks tick down, eventually, that's when the real stress begins.
Right. Everybody that you're seeing on the screen right now, we all identify as chess players, and a switch does get flipped when the first move is made. Let me just ask you one very specific chess question. Supratit was the probably the most dynamic game, and you couldn't get C5 in. He finally got F5 in. You sacked the exchange. The moment you sacked the exchange, what was your thought process? Was it something desperate to play Rook takes B3 or what?
Yeah, I just couldn't see a move. I couldn't see a plan. Yeah, I was so angry at myself for playing the move knight to b5 a bit earlier, just before sacrificing, because it kind of left me committed. I had just had nothing else to do, and he would just slowly build up, improve his position. So I thought I'd change the nature of the game, maybe at least scare him with some strong pawns, but he's not scared. And yeah, he actually played it very safe in the end, but he probably could have punished me if he'd been more accurate.
Ben, what would you like to ask our winner today?
I have two questions. Uh, what do you think was your best move in the simul, and what do you think was your worst move?
Oof. So worst move would be against Supratit, playing just before I sacrifice the exchange, playing knight to b5 because
Yeah, the engine didn't like knight b5.
yeah, it had no business being on b5. I think I just got confused. Yeah, it's just a bit of a silly move first, think later type of decision. Best move? Oof, that's tough. Maybe the final move against Megan, just because it was flashy. I had to like triple check that I wasn't blundering one of my two queens, but
Oh yeah, I like
uh,
that move. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
yeah, I was just doing that for the cameras in the end. But yeah, it's hard. I don't play good moves, Ben. That's my problem. I just play lots of decent moves and just hope that they add up.
That's what I try to do, but they're never decent.
Ugh,
Yeah. Well, you had
being
the best
modest.
score of any of the stars, so congratulations. Didn't lose a game. You told us on the break that you thought you were playing too slowly, but we thought you were using your time pretty well. We sort of liked the pace that you kept.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was only that one game against Supratit where I felt like I tanked for far too long. But in general, I was trying to keep ahead on the clock on all boards, and I was leaving the ones I knew I was in control. The two games I won, I was leaving those a bit longer.
Mhm.
But but yeah, clock simmers, they're another level. Another level of tough.
One of the things we tried to do with this match was, of course, show your generation of English chess, and we wanted to make sure we invite some English players, Supratit and Bodhana. I know you've got some other strong players. Ethan is another 2300 young kid. Tell us about the state of English junior chess, and do you think it can return to the glory days of the 80s and 90s when you guys were winning Olympiad medals?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very patriotic, and it's kind of been my dream to kind of see England do great things again. It's been a long time. We've won some medals in Olympiads, World Team Championships, but it feels like the Olympia team, we're getting older. I'm still the youngest one, and I'm no spring chicken. So it's really nice to see the youngsters making progress. I don't want to put too much kind of pressure on their shoulders, but they're all doing the right things. Like Supratit, his development over the last 12 months alone is incredible. I just took a quick look at his games, and he's leveled up so much. Bodhana, of course, yeah, everyone knows how talented she is. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that I'm going to get replaced on the England team soon. And yeah, just great to see them doing well and pushing each other. That's the main thing. Like you said, there's so many more as well. So cautiously optimistic. Maybe not the
Yeah,
next
we
India, but getting close.
well, no one's the next India, but we should also throw in a longtime chess kid player, Shreyas Royal, who made GM. And I interface with all these families. They all come from great families with very positive ways of dealing with child prodigies, and that's been really great to see. Chat jumped in with a couple of questions. First one is from Dr. Frankenstein. And make sure I don't misspeak Frankenstein. What is the youngest age of an opponent that's beaten you thus far? I know you beat John Nunn when you were 9 in a blitz game. That's a legend right there. But has come about happened to you? You lost any young kids?
I was 8, Mike, but
8.
I I have lost to some young kids. I think the biggest age difference was well, at least in a tournament game, was against Prague when he was just turned 12. Of course, he was a grandmaster already, but yeah, that was a cold shower. That was a rude awakening. That was when I was like at my peak as well. So that made it doubly heartbreaking. But yeah, at least he went on to do good things, Prague. So I can't complain too much. There's been a few draws against like 10, 11-year-olds in Blitz and Simmels, but probably I've lost to someone young in Title Tuesday at some point, but I think 12 at the moment.
Gotcha. Well, I was in Isle of Man when a certain 2600 Grandmaster lost in under 20 moves as white to a 12-year-old Prague. So I'm not going to throw that Grandmaster under the bus, but let's go on to our next question. Mark Anasso says, David, do you see any of these youngsters to get an invitation or a wild card in big events? So yeah,
Yeah,
these four that you played.
yeah, I would love that. I know that Bodhana, for example, she's been invited to some very strong events. Um, yeah, she was in the WR Masters, I think, last year, played against Aragaisi, which was a very cool experience. But yeah, I mean, if they keep doing the right things, if they keep getting these breakthrough results, then I'm sure the invites will come. It's a lot of time still ahead.
And finally, Jeffrey D asks a question that we don't even know the answer to. You're wearing your glasses now, but what happened to them during the match?
Yeah, it's I pretend that I'm Clark Kent, but I'm just I don't know. It's just how I've always been. I don't wear glasses when I play, like ever, because my short vision is pretty decent. But I've started wearing glasses more just because people don't recognize me anymore without them. So yeah, I didn't even realize I took them off until like after the final game finished. And I kind of checked myself out on the camera. I was like, wait, something looks wrong. But yeah, I'm glad people are noticing, and I'm glad they still recognize me.
Yeah, I didn't even pick up on it. We were so glued to the games. But yeah, you look more in your element now. Back to commentator, I assume, or did this inspire you to play some over the board events?
Oof. Yeah, actually, like 2 hours before the game started, I was like, right, this is retirement, win or lose, whatever happens in this match, I'm done. But like halfway through the games, I was really enjoying it. Now I'm like, give me more chess. I don't know. I'll stick to Title Tuesdays for now. Maybe the British Championship at some point, maybe the Olympiad when that comes back. But yeah, commentary comes first.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Ben, do you have anything else for David?
No, thanks for playing this match against the Rising Stars. I thought you played really well and you got positions you liked, and it was really enjoyable for me and Mike to analyze the games. And I guess you told Mike you were afraid of making a one move blunder. It looks like you didn't. Knight b5, I wouldn't call a blunder. So
Mhm.
you didn't really give any material away in any of the games, all the pressure on you. And I just gave a simul in Vegas of 39 boards. And I don't wish that on my worst enemy. I'm not doing that again. So simuls are tough, especially when the players are strong. So good job, David.
No, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed. I was expecting some harsh words, but no, I'm honored. Thank you.
We try to keep it wholesome here. Well, thank you, David. David has won Kids versus Stars episode 5. That makes the Grandmasters 3-0 against the kids in this 1 versus 4 clock simul format. We want to thank you for everyone joining us. I'm sure you'll see David on commentary soon, and hopefully you'll see him over the board, if nothing else, at the Tashkent Olympiad next year in Uzbekistan, but hopefully sooner. So thank you, David. Thank you to my co-commentator, Grandmaster Ben Feingold. Thank you to our producer, Alex Dmitrievich, working on his birthday. Happy birthday, Alex, and thank you for doing the show. And coming up on Chess.com, you can play in the Bughouse Community Championship qualifiers. We've got some qualifiers later today. We've got some qualifiers tomorrow. I believe the finals are July 11th. I'm hopping a plane to London for Chess Fest. Busy times all around. So with that, we'll close the show. And David, we look forward to seeing if the Grandmasters can continue their winning ways in the next Kid versus Stars.
Yeah, I'm rooting for the kids, but thanks, Mike. Thanks, Ben. It's been fun.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.